It's the Sports Peninsula Podcast. Coming up, we're continuing to analyze the draft prospects for the upcoming 2025 NFL Draft being held in Green Bay this April. In this episode, we'll discuss the prospects at the offensive tackle positions. Most draft classes feature several NFL-ready prospects, and the 2025 class is no exception. The Detroit Lions are a pair of Pro Bowlers at tackle now, but the depth could need to be addressed. We'll discuss possible fits for the Lions and discuss who we like next. Now, here's your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula Podcast. My name is Dave Brzezinski Drew. We're talking draft class 2025. We're talking offensive tackles. Joining me to do that and more is Coach Andy Shield of the Marine City Mariners. Coach, how you doing?
Doing well. Position that's been very kind the last 10 years for the Detroit Lions. Drafting Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell in the first round here. Both of which are Pro Bowl offensive tackles, though we can say. One replaced the other this past year.
Yeah, really.
So this is a position that the Lions have had a lot of success this past decade in drafting. Have had a lot of success in the past. Jeff Backus was a real good first-round pick. Stocker McDougal, Aaron Gibson.
McDougal.
Different.
Was it different? Yeah.
Those are different guys. But Lomas Brown, we have had some phenomenal first-round draft pick offensive linemen here for the Detroit Lions. Are we there now? I don't know. Maybe more so at this position than the center position. Again, we'd be drafting depth at this point in time, or somebody that we'd be kicking down inside. Do we have those kind of prospects, Drew? We're going to find out. How are you doing, sir?
I'm really good. I'm excited to talk about tackles because I agree with you. I mean, this is of the offensive line positions. This is the spot, right? The blind side. And Coach, I'm looking at the
money spot. They get
the money exactly, and there's a reason for it. I mean, there's several of these guys that are definitely earmarked for the first round. Let's take a look at our top 20 board, Coach. Let's work it down for us. Who you liking here?
We'll go from bottom right to upper left. Brandon Crenshaw Dixon out of Florida, another SEC player. The guy I saw in person, me and Dr. Shield, we went and weathered the storm Thanksgiving weekend over at Spartan Stadium when Rutgers came in. We saw Big Holland Pierce ourselves out of Rutgers. He's in at 19. Ernest Green III out of Georgia at 18. Armand Membao out of Missouri at 17. And at 16, Anthony Belton out of NC State. Getting into the top 15, we've got a guy that's his brother and dad played in the NFL, Jack Nelson out of Wisconsin. Jonah Savayanea. I worked on this one, Drew. We don't see a lot of Arizona Wildcat football here unless you stay up late.
That's true.
We did, and I'm sure I heard that name a few times. I did go through YouTube to make sure I got it right, though, for the episode. Jonas Savayanea out of Arizona. And that's a good-looking prospect. We're not going to feature him, but that's a guy that's going to get drafted in Green Bay. Chase Lund out of UConn. Johnny Cornelius out of Oregon. And then Ozzie Trapillo out of Boston College takes us in at number 11. Into the top 10. These are guys I think that are probably all going to be gone by Friday evening in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Emory Jones Jr. out of LSU. Longtime prospect over there, very highly touted. Marcus Membao out of Purdue. Kind of funny that we've got two different guys with that kind of pronunciation of the name, and they're spelled completely different. Yeah. But he's another great Big Ten football player. Guy I am really, really intrigued by is Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. Someone to we'll be talking about him perhaps. And then we've got Aireontae Ersery, big Aireontae Ersery, one of Coach Fleck's Row the Boat Gophers over in Minnesota. In at 6, Wyatt Milum, West Virginia. Drew, I know you like him quite a bit. Get into our top 5. We got 2 Texas Longhorns. David, we have featured 3 Texas offensive linemen already. If you talk about at the center position as well with Mr. Majors. But we're going to be talking about at number 5, big Cameron Williams, their right tackle. And at 4, Josh Conerly Jr. out of Oregon. They've got both of their tackles on the big board here. Is that we know are a fine football team. The national champion, Ohio State Buckeyes, have a representative in Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. Hurt his knee early in the season, didn't play during the playoffs. but he is a high-level, high-caliber prospect. Will Campbell out of LSU in at number 2 could be number 1 on a lot of boards, and that would not be a mistake if it was. For us, though, at number 1 is a young man out of Austin, Texas, by the name of Kelvin Banks Jr., David.
Yeah.
He will be our number 1 offensive tackle, and the first tackle we will preview here on the 2025 SPP Draft Preview.
Yeah, awesome job, Coach. And I'll tell you what, when you look at that, like we talked about the Lions, two Pro Bowl tackles this year. Lions 15-2 this year. I know obviously they got bounced early in the playoffs, but there's other reasons for that. But when you look at this board and you say, well, what teams were really good this year? Well, I heard Oregon was pretty good. There's a couple guys up there. Yeah, I understand Texas was pretty good. They went pretty far in the playoff. There's a couple tackles there too. It's the national champions got a tackle there too. I mean, if you're a good team, it starts up front in the trenches, and that's why this position group is so important. Certainly, Detroit fans know this very well, like you mentioned earlier with the draft picks, and having Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell at tackle, just outstanding. But Coach, let's jump into it. Let's take a look right now at our first guy, and you brought him up, Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. Hook 'em horns. What do you like?
Yeah, Kelvin Banks Jr., 6'4", 320-pound junior. He's a Texas native out of Humble, Texas, the humble town of Humble. Big 5-star prospect. That wasn't humble. He was one of the big, grandiose guys coming out, and he produced. 2024 Lombardi Award winner for overall lineman. And then there's 2024 Outland Trophy winner for offensive lineman. This kid is the kind of the toast of the position, so to speak, or toast of the O-line this year in college football. He was All-American, All-SEC, a 2-time All-Big 12 player prior to the Longhorns coming to the Southeastern Conference, and he was a freshman All-American. So Kelvin got on the field real early down in Austin for the Longhorns, 2,700-plus reps at left tackle. So this is a kid that's logged some football already. So he was a blue chipper from the start, and he's a blue chipper continuing on into his NFL draft year, Drew.
Yeah, I mean, so much to like here, Coach. Talk about specifics. What do you like?
Well, I think, from looking at his film, I mean, if you in the study of it, and I use the same kind of the football, the same page, so to speak, for everybody. The football film room, NFL draft football film room on YouTube, and you could hear his engagement. He is a down blocker extraordinaire, and he has got some punch to him. He's an excellent hand fighter. And when you play with those heavy hands that way, that will wear down on an opponent. If you can, heavy hands. And it just after a while, you wear a defender down with that. And that's something that he plays with. He's, very aware of stunts and blitz schemes, which is so important, at tackle and at guard. And that's why I think so many adapt him at guard. We're going to, have you look at some weaknesses here in a minute. And we talk about, will he be an O tackle or O guard as a weakness? Well, that can also be a strength too. We don't list it as such, but because he's not played any guard. Not substantively at the college level, but when you're that kind of aware, when you're that kind of a student of the game and understanding, have that kind of football IQ, you can tend to play across the offensive line at multiple positions. He's an excellent combo partner. He can double and bounce, double and scoop, fold. He's got all those kinds of techniques. So he's great at work, at working with a guard on a blocking scheme. And he's great on the second level. He can match and drive feet and step on toes with the best of them and cover linebackers. I mean, he's a guy that, like a Jack Campbell, he can actually come up and fit with him and run him off. He's got that kind of ability to do that, where that's when Jack Campbell has shown that he can kind of climb over blocks really, really well with his great length and size. Tough to do with a guy like Kelvin Banks. Very good blocker in space, so they can pull and get him out in the open. Kind of do some Penei Sewell things with him. Downfield blocking, the screen game, real good at all of it. Elite quickness for an O lineman. Just tremendous quickness. And he's a leverage tactician. He gets underneath you and doesn't lose his ground. Drew, Kelvin's a heck of a player. He's going high.
Yeah.
Top 10. This is a top 10 pick. But he's not also without some misgivings and some things that could be a bit of a question mark or a red flag when he comes to the NFL. What are they, Drew?
Well, yeah, you hit it on the head, Coach. His length and range can be an issue against the best edge rushers. Now, I know you looked at that Georgia film and when he was going against Walker, and he struggled. So he's an elite prospect, but he's got to bring his A game at all times regardless of who he's against. He's certainly better against the more traditional defensive ends, the very quick, perhaps undersized guys. He's got to make some adjustments. And the question is, can he do it really effectively? We think he can, but again, it's something that has to be looked at. Quickness and athleticism, again, that's going to be challenged by those elite edge rushers. That's what we're talking about. He can lunge and reach at times. Now, there again, that's kind of the cause and effect, right? You get the undersized, quick guy. He's tend to get into some bad habits, unfortunately, and that's something we got to look at there with Kelvin. The hands can get over aggressive. You talked about what a great hand fighter is and how violent he is at the point of attack, but it can get over aggressive, and that means maybe it comes outside of that out of that pad
numbers. You want him on the numbers.
Want him in the numbers.
Numbers
exactly.
and inside. Yep.
And that can happen. So it's more about kind of getting out of that disciplined repetition mentality and start to get a little sloppy if the situation isn't working out. And that's something he's got to work on. But I think that's very coachable, Coach, and he seems like a coachable guy. So I'm not personally panicked about that, but these are red flags. He's got to work on them. Now, when you say, can he be an offensive tackle or offensive guard? And that, again, we many times, and I'll say it again, if you're versatile, it's better. But in this case, if you envision Kelvin Banks and you draft him in the top 10, you think, well, I'm going to just slide him inside. What are you doing and why? Because to me, if I'm taking a tackle in the top 10, it's because they're going to play tackle. Now, I would say this, guys like Penei Sewell and I'll say Tristan Wirfs, even going back in our experience with the draft, the right tackle isn't necessarily a downgrade from the left tackle anymore. Offenses aren't that vanilla anymore. So the left tackle isn't always 90% of the time the blind side to the right-handed quarterback. Yeah, they are, but that doesn't mean they're more important necessarily than the right tackle. Penei Sewell's been a right tackle in Detroit since day one. And yeah, Taylor Decker's a fine tackle, but many people will argue Penei Sewell's the best tackle in the game right now. He's still at right tackle, guys.
He's at right tackle.
So that's not a bad thing. But to me, it's like, is it that he's just that good that you think he's that versatile, you can do that and coach him up there? I don't know. But to me, if I'm drafting Kelvin Banks Jr., I'm drafting him to be a tackle. He's a left tackle. That's where I'm looking for him to be, Coach. And I think he'll be a good one. But I guess what this illustrates is that there isn't this can't miss, destined for Canton guy necessarily in this class, but there's at least 6 guys that are likely going in the first round on day one. This is one of them, in my view, Kelvin Banks. Your thoughts?
Traditional draft value would have this guy, he's in the top 10. Well, so if you kick him down inside, that means you'd be drafting, you want to draft a left guard in the top 10? Well, in this case, we're talking about a player that may start that way and then work himself out. Kelvin Banks Jr., is he a franchise O-lineman like Alt was last year? Potentially. I don't think it's a guarantee. He is not Penei Sewell. He is not that kind of caliber prospect coming out, but I think Kelvin Banks Jr. very, very likely could be a Pro Bowl caliber player, and so is Will Campbell, Drew, the guy that we're talking about next. Will Campbell, big old offensive tackle out of LSU, 6'6", 323. So now we're talking about that prototypical size, and you can kind of see it here as he sinks into Mr. Johnson from Mississippi State. And yet he's another junior, guy that hails from his home state, or played at his home state. He played at LSU. He's from Monroe, Louisiana, high school All-American. So a big ticket prospect from his home state of Louisiana, has started every game at LSU at left tackle in his career. When he got into campus in Baton Rouge, he became the starter. And 2,500 plus reps later, he's still there, and he's only had 4 career sacks allowed. This is a kid that started as an 18-year-old true freshman. So that's pretty doggone impressive. It's pretty doggone impressive. 3-time All-SEC player, 2024 consensus All-American. So that means every bureau, every predication, every website, every major source to college football had him as a first-team All-American. He was also a 2022 consensus freshman All-American. So this is a blue blood, blue chip offensive tackle prospect, Drew, has been from the very beginning. Tell us what he does well, my friend.
Yeah, I'd love to. Mean streak out of the stance, and you got to like that. As long as it's controlled aggression, you love it, and he's got it. I mean, in this you can see it on tape, folks. He's definitely got it. Strong, tough, and physical. I mean, he's an impressive specimen, quite frankly, and displays this really just great functional athleticism and flexibility. Really everything you'd want in a left tackle. And he loves to run block. That's awesome. That's what you. I mean, it's. I would say it's certainly more fun to pass block. It's a little bit easier, but run blocking, man, you got to have, and this guy's got it. Pass pro maestro. I mean, this guy, he's amazing in pass protection. The fact that he's passionate about run blocking, there's so much to like about Will Campbell. And he's got pro functional athleticism. Watch the tape. We've watched him against some of the best in college this past year and the last couple of years. And Will Campbell's a dominant player. He just has a great understanding of the game. He's a processor of what he sees. That's that football IQ. So he's great at visualizing what's in front of him. He's great at reading defenses and schemes. And I mean, Coach, there's so much to like. It's like he kind of jumps off the paper, but there are some concerns here, maybe some red flags. And let's talk about those. What do you see?
Well, he's an aggressive player. He's got that kind of that mean streak, and when you do that, sometimes you can get away from technique a little bit, and you can kind of get away from the fundamentals that really need to be in place for you to be dominant. So yeah, he can be a little bit inconsistent with his leverage. He can probably get his pad level can get a little high, can maybe play a little high, can get out of stance a little high. And he's for being a 6'6" kid, he doesn't lever the best. He's not the greatest reach guy. So, I mean, like a Zadarius Smith, who's got unbelievable levers for, it's still like his calling card and what he uses to be able to leverage his blocks and that kind of thing. He could give Will some trouble, at the tender age of, I guess, what will he be, 34 next year? Because, Will doesn't have the longest reach. So, you got to play with leverage. And if you don't have reach, well, you're going to lose some reps in the NFL that way. And he has a tendency to kind of fall off blocks, and that's because he's not as long and levery as some of his proteges. So those are some things that are physical, just limitations for Will. And he can be a little guilty of the lunging and grabbing too. And that's just going to be, if you're going to lunge and get your hands out in front, you're going to grab, you are now showing the referee that you're holding. That's what you're doing. Lunging forward and grabbing in front of you. You're going to show him that you're holding. And if you show an NFL referee that you're holding, that's getting called. That's getting called. Or it will be getting called because that coaching staff on that sideline that's getting held is not going to let you not call it the next time. He's going to overset a little bit. And what that means, okay, like they call it a kick step, Drew. And it's kind of hard. If we ever had the ability to have a camera on us, we could do it like they do in the Fox crew and have a nice little turf area. We could show these techniques, but it's a kind of a kick step. It's like a kick slide, like a slide step. And you get the Bosa's, guys like the Bosa's, the Myles Garrett's, Miller, Von Miller, guys of this nature that are outstanding arc, edge, rush, speed rush type guys. They're going to make a guy like Will Campbell feel like he's really got to kick back to be able to get that gain step on you so you can't race his hip and get around him. So if you do that now, you give him, and we would never teach this at the high school level because this is a surefire way to lose contain, but to then come and then cross his face, get deeper, And now you got an inside path to the quarterback.
Yeah.
And that's something that Will's going to have to be careful of. It's not the last time we're going to talk about that too. But I tell you what, Drew, I mean, we're not once again, we're not going to get our hands on Will Campbell. And with both Sulendecker, and this is a tackle. This is not a guy like Kelvin Banks Jr. who's going to probably or could transition inside. Campbell's a tackle. It's just not quite the fit yet. But I tell you what, we're going to look for a guy like Will Campbell in a couple of years. We sure are.
Yeah, and I really thought, and I still think that the gap between Banks and Campbell is very narrow, and I think he's an outstanding prospect as well. Very, very possibly a top 10 guy with Banks. You never know. You're splitting hairs really between these two guys. They could go in opposite order. I don't know, but they're both earmarked for the top 10 in my view. Very good football players. It's going to be fun to watch them in the league next year for sure. Let's talk about our next prospect, Josh Simmons. Coach, what do you like?
Well, he comes from the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes. Did not play in that game against Notre Dame. He torched that knee a little bit earlier. He torched that knee in the Oregon loss earlier in the year. That's when he got hurt. Josh is a 6'5", 310-pound senior. He's a kid that did not start his career in Columbus. He actually started in his native hometown of San Diego, California. He's a San Diego kid. He keeps it classy in San Diego. Played for Coach Hoke in the Aztecs over at San Diego State. And he got on the field early there. It was probably a move by design, knowing that he could probably really get on the field early there. This is something you're going to see with the modern college football player now with the ability to transfer the way they do. You may see this a little bit more here. But he started 26 games for San Diego State in his career. And then in his 2 year, he was a 2-year starter at both places. 2-year starter at San Diego State, 2-year starter at Ohio State. 1,100 plus reps at left tackle and has almost 800 at right tackle. So this is a kid, unlike the other two prospects, he has got a lot of diversification at the two different tackle spots. We're talking about a tackle here, but we are talking about a kid that could play either side. So that's very intriguing. He's a member of the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes. Last year, we were highlighting that on people's bios that played for the University of Michigan. This year, it's the Ohio State Buckeyes. He was a member of that team and a big part of that. Even though he did not play in that game, Drew, as mentioned before, he had season-ending knee surgery toward his ACL against Oregon in October of 2024. So he's nursing that injury. A little bit of a JMO type situation when you're drafting this guy. But again, we're talking about a first-round pick.
Yeah, so much to like that. Even like it's great comparison with Williams, because even with the recovering from the injury, there's still so much to like. He's such a great prospect. Let's talk about some of that, Coach. What other things do you like about Mr. Simmons?
Well, he's got the frame. He's a big 6'5", 310-pound kid, and he's got the kind of the chiseled arms. It's a lean, packed up 310. It's a well-proportioned 310. So he's kind of got the NFL frame going right now, and he's got the long, wide, rangy body that you want with an offensive tackle. He does have the good levers. Unlike our who we had featured just previously, Will Campbell. He does have a real good job at sustaining length on the edge with his arm length. He's an extreme competitor. This is another mean streak football player, a guy that wants to get after it, a mean mauling guy. Real ugly streak in him. He can play either tackle. Very powerful physical down blocker. Saw it time and time again. In fact, that's how he kind of got caved underneath. He came down so hard into his defender that the whole thing kind of caved underneath him, and that's how he got kind of some instability in that knee and that buckle, and he lost his season for it, which is a shame because he's a vicious down blocker. Which is the lead block to a base block and a lead block to a double team. So this kid, he packs that kind of a punch. Great first step, both out of run and pass. He's got the burst. He's got that get off. Josh Simmons could be someone that could be the number one tackle prospect had he not gotten injured in October 2024. Not a perfect prospect, Drew, but Drew, that kind of headlines his weaknesses, though, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the injury obviously is the immediate red flag, but the good news is he's going to recover fully, and there doesn't appear to be any major concern about it, other than the fact that he's had it. So that there's always that it's in the back of a GM's mind or a coach's mind that it could happen again. Well, it could happen to anybody. So
Jameson Williams, a wide receiver who had a torn ACL, we drafted him in the first round.
He's still pretty fast too, last I checked. So he can recover from it, and he will recover from it. But it is what is put him below Campbell and Banks and certainly on our board. And again, much like Banks we talked about earlier, elite speed's a concern. He can be a little bit susceptible to those smaller, quick edge rushers. So, it's kind of a given almost when you're a bigger left tackle or bigger right tackle. That's always going to be a challenge. But it's something that certainly he's going to have to keep working on, especially coming off the injury. And he can get laid off the snap. So again, he's got to get his timing down. He's got to get really in sync with the cadence of his quarterback and really understanding that he can be coached up in that too. So again, it's something he's got to work on, but it's not something he can't overcome. He's been a bit of a flag magnet. So and then we talk about you love aggression, but you want controlled aggression. And you don't want you can get handsy, but you got to be careful not to overextend, like you were saying, Coach. And sometimes that'll happen, but he doesn't do it. Usually he's got the good long leverage on the edge rushers, and that's a great thing. But again, he can get a little over aggressive, so he's got to be careful with that. And again, he's got to refine and become a more technical blocker. That's what we're talking about, basically. So again, keep working on the hand technique, keep working on the footwork. Even if it's like anything, Coach, right? If you're good at something, keep working on it, because that's why you got good at it. It's not just about working on what you're deficient in. You got to keep working on what you're strong at too. But Josh Simmons is a very, very good prospect. If not for the injury, I mean, he's a top 10 prospect without question. Without question, it all comes down to how many teams in the top 10 are tackle needy this year versus quarterback or receiver needy, which is where a lot of those players tend to go. But lots to like about Simmons, Coach.
Yeah, and there are some that do that could pop into the late end of the top 10. If you have that kind of time to wait on a guy that's not going to probably be ready for full go into the training camp, and you're drafting 8 or 9 in the draft. Wow, you must have had a lot of injuries that year, because that's a high pick to not be able to have right away. But I certainly think top 15, that's very distinctly possible. If he came again, I just don't know if the timing is there for us. If Josh Simmons is somehow at our spot, I mean, that's an intriguing option, but we don't have room for him right now. And but he's not going to be ready to play. I don't foresee that being something that we have to even really think about much. He's not going to be there. Yeah. Boy, would he look good in the Lions uniform, like Will Campbell would, like Kelvin Banks would. We're talking about the O-line, and Brad Holmes was very, very, very explicit about saying this is who we are. That's just something that's always going to be maintained. The offensive line is ultimately, so esteemed. It's because it's kind of the fabric of the team. So yes, they're always looking to build upon it. Probably a year out from this type of a prospect. And again, I don't know if we'll be drafting in a spot anytime soon where we could get a guy like this anyway, Drew.
Very true, very true. Here's another guy who might look good in a Lion uniform. Coach, talk about him.
Our fourth offensive tackle prospect that we're going to talk about, our fourth guy on our big board, is Josh Conerly Jr. out of the University of Oregon. Oregon had a couple real fine offensive tackles. Johnny Cornelius is the other one. Here's the one that's going to be in the top 8, though. 6'4", 315-pound junior. He was a 5-star recruit out of Seattle. So this is another big blue chip football player from the West Coast. He played running back early on in his career in high school. So this is a kid that's a pretty good athlete. He's got some bend. He's got some ability to run. Guys, it's kind of a unique player with the transition of the leagues that we saw last year when Nil became wide open. He's been both all Pac-12 and all Big Ten. And he's an All-American to boot. 1,800 plus reps at left tackle. Maybe not quite the body of work some of his colleagues that we've spoken of just yet, but that's still significant. He's a year off of that. He's got 8 career reps at left guard, center, and right tackle, which, is worth mentioning. I know, that's kind of like an extra little factoid. But the fact of the matter is, he does have a little bit of position versatility. They for some reason they put him in at center for at least one play. That's they trusted him with that task. So, but all those reps, 1,800 plus reps at tackle, and those other little reps like guard and center, 2 sacks. That's all he's allowed. This is a player I have seen on through X, and some of the draft guys and some of the Detroit Lion beat writers talk about is very highly thought of in the Lions brass.
The athleticism jumps out. There's no question about that. He's definitely got the athleticism. Coach, you want me to take on what we like?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we like his feet because they're tremendous. He's quick, agile, and fast. Again, he played running back in high school. That is significant. So like you said, Coach, he can bend, he can run, and obviously that's carried over even as he's put on the mask to go to the O-line. That's still there. Those are excellent traits, and a great mind for the game. The football IQ is high. He's an excellent processor, good combo partner. So what's important about this, and Coach, I'm learning a lot from you. You got to know where you can help. You got to make the right decision on where to help out. And you certainly don't want to help out and then leave somebody hang out to dry. He's very good at recognizing that, and he gets the job done. It's on tape. You see it. A good producer at the second level. That's just critical. We talked off camera earlier, Coach and I did, about how important it is. The tackles, like in the Lions offense, the Ben Johnson offense. Now he's in Chicago, but at nearly every run play, the tackles are pulling. Everyone's moving a lot. So to be that athletic is very important on an offense like the Lions had. So Josh Conerly Jr. would fit the bill. Runs high and hot. You got to love it. High motor, and he's got some intensity, and you got to like that. A great all-around pass blocker. We like what he does in the run game. We like what he does in the pass game too. Heavy-handed and strong striker. There's just so much to like about Josh Conerly, Coach. And I like that he is over 300 pounds, but he's not like 340, 350. He's pretty lean and rocked up too. I like how he looks. I like how he plays. But talk about what some of the things you saw maybe he needs to work on.
Well, sometimes you think of 315 pounds as 315 pounds, and it all plays the same. It doesn't. It doesn't, especially where that mass is held. And there are some concerns about his anchor and his ability to really hold up against the big dogs. That's what probably may limit some position versatility ultimately. I know right now, I think the Lions, and I know we've been talking we're a little more Lionsy with it, seems like, at least this guy is. Probably my fault. A little bit of a bias on my side of things, but left guard. I think that's ultimately right now. If you had a free associate with a Lions fan, where is the spot on the O-line where we could look to do some different things? It's left guard. Because I think, by and large, we're going to either bring Kevin Zeitler back or we'll have Christian Mahogany insert at right guard. Now that could be also Christian Mahogany could be at left guard as well, because I think we may towards the second part of Graham Glasgow's contract is use him as that super sub and across as the third guard, so to speak, and the extra center. Could Josh Conerly fit into that spot? That could be a guy that kicks down. At 28, would that be acceptable? It sure would, because then we also have somebody that could have ultimately become a left tackle or a right tackle. But he's got that's something that's a little bit, he plays, it's a light playing 315. He needs to get pro strong. And we talked about that with a lot of centers. Some of these other guys are a little bit bigger and possess a little bit of a different strength profile. Josh has got to get there. He's got to get pro strong, and that's going to help out with that anchor as well. He plays hot. He plays hard. And those guys that do that, they can kind of burn up every once in a while, and they start to lose leverage, and that pad level gets high. And they also can start to get a little bit clutchy and grabby, which kind of brings us into the other point, is where, he can get the flags tossed on him a little bit. He can catch a little flag fever, as they say, which means those hands to the face, and holding, are the two primary offenses that we see there. And because he's got those violent hands, but they can get clutchy and they can get outside the numbers and up top, and they can reach and get over the top of shoulders and up under the neck. Too much of that with Josh. He's gotten penalized for it in his career. Got to clean those things up. But a hell of a prospect and a guy, yes, I could see where the Honolulu blue and silver. We got a lot of other positions I think we should go towards. I'm not necessarily enamored with taking Josh Conerly Jr. here, as opposed to some other guys that we will talk about in the coming episodes. But I really, really do like him, Drew.
Yeah, he's to be considered. And quite frankly, as a Lions fan, there's very few positions you wouldn't consider in round one at 28, like you said, because there isn't a starting need per se, but there's all kinds of depth you always need, and really it's best player available. And there's so many positions that they could benefit from. Go figure. Guys will get hurt. Guys got hurt on that O-line. Some people may scoff at what you said, Coach, to say Graham Glasgow a super sub. What do you mean? Well, he played significant time 2 years ago. There were several injuries, and he played and substituted every time. Ragnow went down a few times. Jonah Jackson went down for most of the year. He played a lot, and then he shifted over to left guard when they signed Zeitler. So, I mean, Graham Glasgow is going to be 34 as well, I believe, next year. So that may really benefit him a great deal. You get the best out of him as well. I wouldn't rule him out at all. I wouldn't rule the position out, and I certainly wouldn't rule Josh Conerly Jr. Very good football player. Let's talk about the next guy on our list, Coach. Hook 'em horns.
This is a big man. This is our second Longhorn. So we're talking about the right tackle now for the Texas Longhorn football program. Big guy, 6'5", 335, Cameron Williams Jr. out of the University of Texas. Another Texas native. Mr. Banks is from Humble, Texas. Cameron played out of the tremendous program of Duncanville, Texas, one of the top football and track schools in the country. This place has got one heck of an athletic program. They get it done there. And he was a 4-year starter in that storied program. So, I mean, Jaden Swink, who's a cousin of mine, I'm very proud of. He's a recent graduate of college and stuff now, and he did play quite a bit of college football, but he was a 4-year starter out of Saguaro High School in Arizona, which is a renowned program. So if you can be that kind of a guy and get out on the field that early in a program that competitive, you are a dude. That is for sure. He at one time played as high as 369 pounds. So, I mean, this is a kid that's got mass. He's a very massy, big player and can play heavy. Playing his best football at 335, as he would. 370, 369 is an awful large weight. Try to play that football, play the game of football. 1,100 plus reps at right tackle. He became the full-time starter in 2024. So he doesn't have a lot of miles on him, Drew. He does not have a lot of miles on him. I'll tell you a few more things about him that we like. He moves exceptionally well for his size. Yeah. And you can just see that's a frame right there. That's a 6'5", 335-pound frame. It's tight. It's well put together. He's in good physical condition. So I could see, more mass on him and that kind of thing and how he could do that. He's a very impressive climber to the second level. He can climb. He can get up there and scoop and fold and get up to the linebacker and set some picks and has got good angles that way. So that's impressive. Unlike Josh Conerly, Mr. Johnson or Mr. Williams has got himself an anchor. He's a big old boy. He's 6'5", 335, played at 370, Drew. I think I've said that 15 times in the last 2 minutes. But That tells me he's got an anchor. He can hang in there. That's not a problem. And he's flexible too. So, I mean, can down block, he can drive block, he can do a lot of these different things. Another guy that you could maybe talk about bouncing down and playing a little bit of guard. And he's got that imposing down blocking ability, very similar. These guys, man, I can see why Coach Sarkisian had a good year, because he had these two guys at those bookend tackles. So, I mean, yeah, he's got the functional and requisite athleticism to be a guard or a tackle, and that is truly a plus. He's got long levers for his body type because he's a thick, kind of wide body, but he's got long arms to boot. So, I mean, yeah, he sure as heck can play offensive tackle. Big old mean street, he's a road grader. I tell you what, he'd look good in Honolulu blue and silver. Are we there yet, Drew? And what are some things that would be maybe something that the buyer should know about him too?
Well, first of all, I think he would look good in Honolulu blue, and I think he would look like guard. He screams guard to me when I see him. And then I'll be honest with you, even playing at 335 last year, he looks bigger than that, which tells me he's got some power, and then that's an awesome thing. Like you say, he's an imposing down blocker. He needs a lot of work in pass pro at the pro level, and that's the first time we've really talked about that. The previous prospects that hasn't been a concern as much. A little more with Cam Williams. He's definitely run blocking is his forte. That's not to say he can't get there. I think he can, but he's got to work on that a little bit more. Can he handle an NFL speed rusher? Well, if you're going to struggle in pass pro, the answer is probably not as well as you would like. So he's going to definitely have to work on that. And he has to overset a lot. Now, Coach, explain that to the viewers what that means.
Well, you're really opening yourself up. You're so much protecting your outside that you open yourself completely up, and you give an open inside go and a path directly to the quarterback. Now, good technician, I know what was taught by Coach Ron Godich at Marine City is that what you do with that is you end up pivoting and becoming a defender in basketball, and you take the charge. You reposition and you take the charge, and you both fall down to the ground. That at the high school level it does. Yeah. I'm not so sure that does it at the NFL level, but that's but you've got to be able to recover. And that's what these guys can do because they have that great length. If he's going to overset and he's going to play offensive tackle, he's got to be able to come back inside and recover with that great punch. So I mean, it puts him into a vulnerable position. It's not necessarily a taboo thing. It's not an error to overset, but it does leave you vulnerable to being worked across your face.
Yeah, it makes sense. It'd be like playing in the infield and you're going to shadow something. You're going to shade to the right or the left, depending on the hitter. Well, guess what? You're going to leave a hole somewhere. You better be ready for it. And it's the same concept, same mindset. A guy like Aiden Hutchinson is going to salivate because he loves that inside spin move.
He takes advantage of that.
Absolutely.
He's one of those defenders that can take advantage of that.
And that's one reason I kind of like Williams projecting as a guard a little bit better, to be honest with you, because that's
that problem goes away if you kick down inside.
Exactly. Now, a couple other things to talk about before we move on, though. His hands are heavy, but they can get inconsistent and wide. So, again, it's about being disciplined. They get wide, out come the yellow flags, out come the hankies. So, you got to be careful of that. Now, his anchor does weaken.
With a lot of prospects.
Yes, exactly. So, he wears down in the course of a game, and that's when that anchor starts to weaken a little bit. That pad level starts to rise. The hands get a little inconsistent and wide. So, I'll be honest, Coach, I like him a lot, but this is one guy I am going to be glued to watching his combine results and his pro day, because I want to see what weight he really comes in at, and I want to see how hard he works in these events. If he works hard and the weight's there, I feel pretty good about Cameron Williams. If I see any red flags there at all, that could be a problem. And that's not to say the combine, the workouts are the be-all, end-all, but you can't come in heavy if there's concerns about your weight. So he's going to have to make sure he's ready to go for the combine in about a month here. So, but so much to like about Cameron Williams. And if he were to be a Lion at some point, oh my goodness, I would be definitely moving him inside. No question about it. Oh my gosh. I mean, he's a very fine football player, Coach. Let's talk about our next guy. And this is a guy I like a lot, Coach.
You like him a lot, Drew. I like him a lot as well. The 6'6", 317-pound senior offensive tackle out of West Virginia, Wyatt Milum. Another kid that's a local. He stayed home, Canova, West Virginia. Started 32 out of the career possible 36 games that he's dressed for the Mountaineers. He has started at left tackle. So another guy that has played a lot of that position there. 31 consecutive starts. So he's got some durability. He's a long-time starter. 3-time academic All Big 12 player. 2-time All Big 12 outright. He was a 2024 All-American and academic All-American. So this is a bright kid, a guy that was very decorated, especially this year. 2,300 career reps at left tackle, 0 sacks. We have talked about that before. We talked about that last year a couple times. We'll talk about it again. There are some kids that don't yield any sacks. Doesn't mean they're perfect. But this kid, we had one heck of a high school football career too, Drew.
Sure.
One heck of a college career, and you like him a lot, Drew. Tell us what he does good, man.
A lot of things. Highly productive student athlete, great character and team appreciation. I mean, you don't get those accolades, All-American, academic All-American. You don't get that without having those characteristics, and Milum's got them. Outstanding pass protector, brilliant technical mastery in his pass setting. So he's very good. He understands how he needs to leverage, how he needs to stand, and he also recognizes what he's up against, and he's able to make that adjustment mentally before the snap, and that's a great thing. He's willing and wanting to develop skills as a center. Now that was interesting. I found that very interesting. And again, that's a smart guy. He knows versatility. If the more versatile you are, the longer you're going to play, the better chance you have to play. That's smart. Even though he's been a left tackle basically his whole college career, very good functional athlete. 31 straight starts is a testament to his durability. And coach, like you articulated earlier, just tremendous student athlete. I mean, just he's got a lot going for him. That's why I like him so much. He's not perfect, like you said. Talk about what he needs to work on. Well,
he doesn't have the greatest NFL anchor. He's 6'6", 317, and he looks long there. And obviously he's a big, thick, strong kid, but he doesn't have that great, just requisite, thick-hipped and legged anchor. He's a little bit long in those areas. So again, that doesn't really bode for him to be an interior offensive lineman from the get-go. He is definitely a tackle prospect. Got to get pro strong. We talked about that before. We talked about that with centers. We talked about that a little bit with Will Campbell. But this is a guy that, and Josh Simmons, we've got to get, they've got to, keep developing that way. Wants to be position vertical, and that's something that, hey, that's something for certain, that's a very noble thing. That's great. And that can only benefit you. But he has one career snap outside of left tackle. So he's not position vertical or versatile yet. He's not position versatile.
He wants to be.
Do that on his own merit. You and I can both say we're bilingual. Okay, but if we only know like 2 words in Spanish, I'm not so sure that we're quite there yet. So, kudos to you, Wyatt. Like the eagerness, but we got to get there. Can get worked a little and change the direction some quickness. So the secondary moves and some of the quick stuff and some of the showing and going and stutter stepping and that kind of thing can get him to kind of bite and maybe dip inside or lean outside and give his defenders a lane to stunt or rush. How's he going to be able to hold up against those elite edge rushers and defenders, the Bosas, the Hutchinsons? The list goes on. How's he going to hold up against those guys? Yeah. Is he going to be able to have the kind of success that he had in college where he didn't give up a sack? That's going to be tough to do. But boy, Drew, he's an intriguing one. Not sure at 28, but as we drift into that second round in the day 2, I like Wyatt Milum.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. He's on the edge. There could be a team late in the first round on day 1 that takes Wyatt Milum, and they wouldn't regret it. But I think probably early day 2, very early day 2. I would think in the top 10 of round 2, quite frankly. Just too much talent there to pass up. But yeah, again, wanting to be versatile and being versatile are two different things. And when you're drafting in the later first round, like we talked about Conerly, that's maybe more of what you're looking for. But man, I really like Wyatt Milum a lot. I think he's gonna be a very good NFL player. Would look good at Honolulu Blue, but not at 28. I agree with that. Coach, let's talk about our next prospect. We're rolling the boat again.
Yeah, we're rolling the boat. We're going with Coach Fleck's guys over at the University of Minnesota. Getting away from day 1 here a little bit, probably into day 2 for sure. But we're talking about the young man out of Kansas City, Missouri, Aireontae Ersery. And Kansas City, I'm down up into the Twin Cities at the University of Minnesota with the Golden Gophers. 6'6", 330-pound senior, 3-time All Big Ten selection. He was the 2024 Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year. So this is a very decorated player and a real good player. He's a 2024 All-American, 38 career starts at left tackle. So a journeyman college football player, 2,300 plus snaps at left tackle. He's got 10 snaps between left guard and right tackle. So he's got a little position versatility himself. A very little, but he's got a little bit here, Drew. Mm-hmm. And Aireonte, he's got some definite pluses. And when we go on ahead and looking at those, he showed some impressive durability and consistency. 38 consecutive starts. Very moldable and coachable player. Coach Fleck brings in high caliber guys, high character people, dynamic personalities. And Aireonte certainly is one. This is a kid that's got Lion. He fits the mold as a Detroit Lion. Great run blocker. He's a great Big Ten run blocker. He's a train track guy. He maintains his path and stays right on it. A good, consistent hand striker, so he keeps him inside those numbers. He plays with good leverage for being a big, tall kid. He's agile and athletic, and he's got that NFL. 6'6", 330. You can look at him right there. He looks like an NFL football player, Drew. I really do like Aireonte quite a bit, and he is a fit of a guy that we would an offensive tackle that we could use right now, which would be that Dan Skipper replace type guy. I'm not saying that we are replacing Dan Skipper, but we could be too. So that's distinctly possible. Aireonte's got a couple things to work on, doesn't he, Drew?
Yeah, he does. The pad level is often very high, and that's technique. But I do get concerned about that when you talk about
the NFL level.
Yeah, at the NFL level, and especially, I can't imagine Coach Fleck and his staff didn't recognize that as well. And they weren't able to coach that out of him. That does concern me a little bit, but he's a damn good football player. I'm not taking away from that, but that's something that definitely catches the eye. And he could have some immediate leverage issues. That's a direct result of that. So again, that's a trait that he's going to have to work on to really be an elite offensive tackle in the NFL. He's going to have to fix that. Much stronger run blocker than pass setter at this point. Now, that I am a little encouraged by in terms of going to the NFL because, again, I'd rather have, and this is just my opinion, Coach, and I don't know if I'm crazy or not, but I'd rather have my linemen more run block ready than pass pro ready because I think that's probably a little easier to teach.
That's fair.
Speed rushers, skilled edge pass rushers, they're going to be a problem initially. And again, it all seems to be tying back up into that pad level issue, and again, it's technique. It's going to have to work on it. Speed and sophistication of the NFL will be a major step. And I think probably that might be part of the issue. And I know, obviously this year with the college football changing dramatically, especially the conference, the Big Ten, for instance, there's no more divisions. But let's face it, he wasn't facing Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan every season. And, those have been the big boys the last, umpteen years. So I can see where maybe he's been able to get away with it, perhaps against some of the teams he's been playing. I'm not trying to knock anybody, but it is what it is. I think that's part of the problem. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's a kid that's a day 2 kid, a third rounder, probably, maybe the very back end of the second. And we could look at hopefully him drifting if there's some sort of a little bit of a void at tackle, and he gets into the compensatory third round picks or something like that. That would be great. And he really fits that pro. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's looking like pick 101 from what I had seen projected.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So like in that general area.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that'd be perfect because he'd be a player that could percolate a little bit. He'd be a rostered guy, but he'd be one of our backup offensive tackles and would develop from there. I know we have Giovanni Manu that we've got that we're trying to indoctrinate to, but Aireontae Ersery I think is interesting at that spot, Drew.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about our next prospect, Coach. Actually, the last one we're going to highlight in depth.
Yeah, this is our last ranked prospect and a guy I think I like even more than Ersery, 6'6", 305-pound senior out of North Dakota State, Gray Zabel. He's out of Pierre, South Dakota, where he was a 3-time state champion football player. Now we're talking about a position versatile guy. He started at 4 different positions at North Dakota State across the offensive line. 2024 Consensus FCS All-American, 2024 All-Missouri Valley Football Conference player. So, yep, he's a decorated individual. 950-plus reps at left tackle, 350-plus reps at left guard, 1,000-plus reps at right tackle, and 17 reps between center and right guard. He has played every dang position for the Bison across that offensive line, Drew. This is a position versatile young man and a guy of great intrigue. Talk about us what he does well.
Yeah, I mean, he's a strong down blocker, and that's very evident on tape. And really, he's a difference maker as a strong side blocker. Now, Coach, articulate that for folks watching. What do we mean by that?
As a down blocker?
As a difference maker, as a strong side blocker.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, he's a guy that really is at the point of attack. I mean, they run the ball at him. If they'll move him back and forth and jump him around the offensive line a little bit. If they want to run to the right side, they'll put him out as a right tackle or a right guard. If they want to run left, they'll have him at left tackle. So I mean, this is a kid that they'll move around and kind of be. That's what they were able to do with him. And a lot of good offenses do that with their O-linemen.
It makes a lot of sense. He's a great space and backside blocker as well. He's got heavy hands.
You do the other side too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a beautiful thing. Great technique allows him to be a leverage master. He's mad. He really understands it. I mean, it sounds crazy. He understands his body. He knows what he can do. He knows what he's good at. He knows how to kind of mask his issues that he knows he's got to protect. He's very good at that. Fluid and flexible. His position versatility. I have seen him actually coach even in some mock drafts early now. It's very early. We're recording this on February 3rd, but I've seen him in the first round. I don't project him as such, but it could happen because I could easily see a team seeing him as a center and he could compete. But what does he need to work on?
Well, he's from North Dakota State, so the Bison are in the FCS, and they're a tremendous football program, year in, year out, a national champion contender. But the body of work is what it is. Also, there's some limitations in playing at that level. It's not the most elite talent. Some of these offensive linemen are playing against other first-round draft picks and longtime NFL players. Gray didn't play against too many of those guys at North Dakota State. So he's got to become a better pass setter. He's not the most longest arm guy, so yeah, he's probably destined inside eventually. Reach could be an issue against the long, more athletic edges. So he probably spells more at guard or center, like you had mentioned. His athleticism is going to be challenged, especially on the edge. It's just going to be, kind of like we had just mentioned. He's got a little bit of a wider anchor at this point in time. That's something that they could work on. Just like all these other guys that we said about having light anchors. A little bit of a tweener, Drew. He's a little bit of a tweener, but I tell you what, he's a very intriguing prospect.
Yeah, definitely. And we are running real short on time, Coach, but we want to talk about a couple dark horses. Jack Nelson, the OT out of Wisconsin. He's 6'7", 313 pounds, he's a senior. Pretty good speed, 5.1 in the 40-yard dash. What we like about him is he's position versatile. He's got a good anchor and foundation. He's kind of nasty, kind of mean. He's got a really nice wingspan. We put that picture up there for a reason. He's got some length on him. Started 38 of 39 of his games for the Badgers. He's scheme versatile, which is really, really good. Doesn't have elite foot speed. Got to work on sustaining blocks, particularly in pass sets, and just improve his hand technique. But I think there's a lot to like about Jack Nelson, Coach. And talk about the next guy.
Well, I'll tell you what, Holland Pierce is a giant. 6'8", 344. Got to see him in person. He's absolutely huge. Started 46 games for Rutgers, can play either tackle position. He's an academic all-Big Ten player. Played both ways out of high school. Just a monster. I mean, you can look at that picture right there and take a look at it. And, his strengths all play off of that. Very aggressive, durable football player. But he struggles with speed rush. Little guys are going to get underneath him and give him some trouble. But boy, is he an intriguing prospect. Yes, he will be playing in the NFL next year.
I love it, Coach. Great job today. Everybody, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Check us out on the ESEN network every Saturday night at 7 p.m. For Coach Andy Shield, I'm Drew. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you next week. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Follow us on YouTube so you don't miss an episode at the Sports Peninsula Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter X. Just look for @SportsP Podcast, and follow us to keep up on sports around the great state of Michigan and beyond. You can also catch our show every Saturday night at 7 p.m. on the ESEN Network channel as part of Roku. When you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one, Sports Peninsula Podcast.